Welcome to HMH at Home. This video is part of a series which brings educational videos and family activities into your home during the global pandemic. This week, we are going to be talking about human rights. I want to remind you first that human rights are important for the HMH at Home program this summer because we're running a writing challenge with the question, why are human rights important? You can submit any kind of writing, including fiction, nonfiction, and poetry to our challenge, and museum staff will be reading our favorites for our last video of the summer on July 31st. So I hope you're interested in human rights for that reason, if for no other reason. Okay, let's get started learning a little bit about human rights. So I'm here at Holocaust Museum Houston's Human Rights Gallery. The Holocaust was a major event in human history, and we will have a video later in the series where we will have the opportunity to hear from a Holocaust survivor. So if you don't know anything about the Holocaust, that's totally okay. We'll go over it in a future video. But if you do know something about the Holocaust, think for a moment about why a Holocaust museum might have a human rights gallery. So to think about that question, let's start with what are human rights? So if you're watching with someone else, pause the video and tell the other people around you what you think human rights are. Did you pause? Are you discussing? Or are you waiting for us to give you the answer? Okay, I'll give you the answer. Human rights are rights that humans have. That sounds surprisingly simple, but it's a little more complicated than that. So to demonstrate, we're going to talk a little bit about how humans came to this idea that we should have rights just because we are human.
Okay, so human rights didn't start with rights, they actually started with rules. So the graphic that you're seeing on your screen, we're going to start on the left-hand side and talk a little bit about how human rights developed. So an important first step to human rights was to write down what rules and laws people had to follow. Because how do you follow the rules if you don't know what they are? So then some people started to say, hey, if I'm going to follow these rules, I want some say in writing them. Now, most of the time, the idea was to give only some people, often this ended up being rich white men, rights, rather than saying everyone should have these rights. And this is something that was usually happening within specific countries, for example, the United States. But after World War I, countries formed something called the League of Nations to try to prevent future wars. They clearly didn't do a great job because there was also a World War II, but they did try. And they started talking about how people should have rights no matter where they lived. Then, like you can see in the middle of your graphic, World War II and the Holocaust happened. Millions of people were murdered and millions more experienced terrible things. But all of this was legal because the government of Nazi Germany changed their laws to say that it was legal to discriminate against other people and even to kill other people. So in the aftermath of these terrible events, the League of Nations was reformed and rebranded as the United Nations. So countries around the world, they decided that governments would not always protect the rights of their people. So they got together and created something called the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we're going to talk more about the UDHR in our next video. But I just want you to know for now that even this idea that this is a list of rights that all humans are supposed to have, it wasn't perfect. This happened at a time when many people lived under colonialism, which means that they lived under the control of another group of people. Many times people didn't have freedom. But as we'll discuss next week, the UDHR was a place to start to make the world better.
All right, so your activity for this week is that you are going to pretend that you are the mayor of the very first city on the moon, and Jenna and I have some examples for you here. And the idea is that as the mayor, you get to decide what is your city going to look like, what rules do people have to follow in your city, and what rights do people have in your city. So the idea is to get us thinking a little bit about what rights are important to us, what rights do you think that people should have. So to start off with, it's very important to think about that there is a difference between rules and rights. So we've broken it up in our cities here for you. So this side on the left in each city is going to be the rules, and the other side is going to be rights. So rights are something that everybody has, regardless of who they are. This applies to everyone. Rules are a little bit more of what makes things go smoothly. You'll notice that on ours, the word no is cropping up a lot. So rules often tend to say things that you can't do.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of our examples and kind of give you a sense of the sorts of cities that we created, and hopefully help you think about this. But what we recommend is that everybody, especially if you're watching this as a family or as a friend group, work on your own cities first and then put them together and try to see, do they work together? Are there going to be conflicts? And see if you can take your two cities and join them together in unification to make one city. And so you have to be nice and debate these your rules and your rights and make sure that everybody ends up sort of happy. We're gonna try to be an example for that, although I don't know if Jen and I are gonna manage. We're gonna try. All right, so let's start by talking a little bit about Jenna's city, which you have named Jennatopia. Like it.
Yes, so my city is going to be a research colony of scientists on the moon. Because what is space for if not exploration and science? So on our list of rights, our first right is, of course, equal rights for all, because you cannot complete your scientific endeavors if everyone is not equal and pursuing things equally. Also, freedom of expression, because, of course, everyone needs to say what they need to say. Guaranteed health care, so that we can all feel safe. The right to benefit and share in scientific advances, obviously. Protection of intellectual property, so that no one's taking anyone else's ideas.
I can't take your idea
No.
for the protection of intellectual property.
I think you already did. Also, the right to trial as decided by your peers. And the right to education, because education is going to be very important on the moon. So those are our rights in Jennatopia.
Awesome.
Do you think those will line up with Amy Land?
We're gonna have to see. I feel like some of them are similar. I did steal a couple from you. So I think the intellectual property is gonna be an issue for me. So what rules do you have? Am I gonna fit in Jennatopia?
We'll see. So our first rule is no littering, because we want to take care of space, of course. Also, recycling is required. This is going to be a very green colony on the moon. Library access is available 24/7 so that everyone can research all the time.
Or librarians.
Maybe we'll have some robot librarians to take over some of the time. No double dipping, because it's gross.
And also, you don't want a pandemic on the moon.
Right, exactly. That would be a problem. No alien experiments. We want to be kind to all of our alien friends out there. No age restrictions for politicians. Anyone can run for office at any age. Also, no fossil fuels. Again, we want to take care of space. There's no dress code, so wear whatever you want. Express yourselves. And on the moon, we're going to all be vegetarian. So what do you think? Can you handle it?
I think the vegetarian thing makes sense to me. I'm worried about how does one get a cow to the moon and how does one take care of a cow on the moon?
That's fair, yeah. That was kind of the thought process. It might be a little tricky. Tofu is probably easier to transport, probably.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at mine over here and see how well we fit together. So okay, mine is Amy Land. And so in Amy Land, we start with equal rights. So okay, you made sure to say for all. That's probably good. Yours is a little bit more specific. You don't want anybody like arguing with you about who counts. Freedom of speech, a little bit like freedom of expression, right? So I have the right to vote.
That's probably for the best.
I have the right to vote. Are you voting in Jennatopia?
Oh, we'll allow it. We'll go ahead and vote. I mean, if anyone can run for office, then I think anyone ought to be able to vote.
I guess that's fair. Okay. So I have a right to internet access, because especially in this, in the present, and especially if you're living on the moon, how are you supposed to communicate with your loved ones or people you left behind on Earth? So I feel like that might be important.
I think our society would really like that. So, that might be something that we would gain by partnering with your society.
Ooh, okay, because I feel like that would help with the translation of scientific knowledge.
Definitely.
All right. The right to healthcare. I think I stole that from you. The right to education. So once again, this is just really important for having citizens who know what's going on and understand, and education is just a good thing. And maybe I'm just biased, I'm an educator. So I think you should have the right to protest. If you don't like what I'm doing in Amy Land, sure, go ahead and tell me. And I will try to respect that. Freedom of the press, because I think it's important that everyone have a source of information about what's going on. You don't just want to hear about Amy Land from Amy, because there's a chance that, I don't know, maybe I'm not telling you the truth.
She might be a little biased if they named it after her.
Just a little bit. So then you have a right to trial by jury of your peers to make sure that we're trying to be fair. So those are the rights that I came up with. I feel like,
yeah, it matches pretty well. I think we're okay.
So let's go through. Let's go through some of my rules. So as a sense of what my moon colony looks like, mine is not nearly as scientific as Jenna's. I'm envisioning a place where we all live in tree houses. So we're gonna have to maybe get help from yours in figuring out.
You gotta learn how to build the tree house. Yeah, and grow the trees.
So we're gonna need to grow the trees, and then we're gonna need to build the tree houses. So
that's what scientists are for.
That's what science is for. So let's see what kind of rules we have in the tree houses. So first of all, no homework. I think homework is bad.
I think the scientists might have a problem with that. I have a feeling they'd be pretty for homework.
You might be right. All right. So
but again, that's a rule and not a right.
That's true. That's true. Maybe there's some space for debate here. The voting age on my Amy land is 16, because I think you should be able to vote when you're 16 and up.
That'll help any age politician get elected.
That's true. Onions are banned. I hate onions. And so I'm bringing my prejudice against onions to the moon. No onions. But just to note, sour cream and onion chips are excluded from this because they're not technically onions. Just so you know. You have to wear a spacesuit outdoors because we care about your safety in Amy land and don't want you to die. Yes.
Will spacesuits be provided? Or are you expected to find your own spacesuit?
I think you should be expected to find your own spacesuit. Like, how'd you get to the moon if you don't have a spacesuit?
That's fair. Fair enough.
Maybe Genitopia can be our official spacesuit provider.
Okay, all right. We'll work on that.
Then mine got really dark because I work at a Holocaust museum. So no genocide, so no trying to destroy entire groups of people. So I'm not about to invade Genitopia and try to kill everybody.
We appreciate that.
No slavery, because slavery is bad. And I think we need to make sure that doesn't happen. So here I had a thing where I was like, doctors and nurses should only work a maximum of 8 hours a day. And then I was talking to Jen and I was like, well, what about construction workers? And what about people who work in grocery stores? And what about teachers? And then I realized maybe I just need to have an 8-hour workday. So 8-hour workday. Everyone has to use the Oxford comma because, once again, this is one of my things that I'm very biased with.
I support that.
The Oxford comma very basically is when you have 3 things in a sentence. You have blank, comma, and blank. That's the Oxford comma. You have to use it in the Amy land. Thanos is banned. Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Don't like him, he's banned.
Is the name also banned? Like, can we not speak this? Is it a Voldemort kind of situation?
That's a good question.
Are you going to take it to committee and they can vote on it?
Let's take it to committee. So this is one of those things, when you make rules, you have to be a little bit careful because people actually have to follow these. And so, you have this issue, well, what if someone's name is Thanos and they're not the actual Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe? So maybe I should have said Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is banned.
Not invited.
Yes. So maybe I needed to be more specific. And then I stole no dress code from Jenna.
We're going to have a very colorful couple of colonies on the moon.
So I think maybe I need to have a little bit of it. Maybe we need to talk about this protection of intellectual property. But other than that, as long as you're willing to ban onions, I feel like we could merge these societies. Okay?
We'll talk. We can make a deal.
Okay. All right. So we want you to try this out yourself and really, whatever you think should happen. So whatever rules and whatever rights you think people should follow, try it out as individuals first, then get together with a group, get together with your family, with your friends, and try to combine all of your cities on the moon and see what happens. And it's very interesting to see. Sometimes you work together pretty well, like Jen and I, but to be fair, we work together already.
It's true.
So maybe that helps. And sometimes you might find that you do not fit at all. But it's really interesting to think about rights. Now remember, human rights is the subject of our writing challenge. So if you want to participate in a writing challenge, you're going to write something that talks about why human rights are important. And you can do this in a short story, in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, a song, some kind of personal essay, although that seems like that might be homework. Whatever way you feel like you want to talk about why human rights are important. Now, what we're going to do next week is we're going to talk about something called the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we're going to be looking a little bit at the rights that we came up with and see how do these agree with what actual humans on actual Earth said should be human rights.
So we're going to investigate that a little bit. In the meantime, show us what your society looks like. Draw us pictures, draw us maps, post your rules using the hashtag HMH at home. We would really, really love to see what kind of societies you're creating. Let us know what you think of the rights and the rules that we came up with. And if you would like to live in Genitopia or in Amyland or in a combined scientific research colony in trees.
In tree houses, yeah.
So thank you so much for tuning in. Be with us next week and we'll talk a little bit more about the Declaration of Human Rights. And good night from
Genitopia
and Amyland.